And yeah, we're live. Hi, hello everyone, and welcome to today's live Q&A. If you have any questions about what we'll be discussing today, you can ask us during the session. We'll try our best to answer them live. Today's discussion is really interesting, and it's not just for WordPress users. It's just quite frankly for anyone who has a business and has some sort of online presence, basically. And it's not just about security; it's about trust, business reputation, and much more. Today's guest, he's Maltese like me, which is very, very strange. The first Maltese I've had. He worked for a company called Akunetics, like me, but not at the same time. You're a security engineer and works mostly on web application security industry, but also DevOps and cloud security. And even though we're both from the same country, which is very small, and we work for the same company, I think the first time we met, it was in San Francisco at the Jazz Bar.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we only met once, actually. That was quite
Exactly
weird.
that time. Yeah. And we used to work for different companies. We had friends in common, of course, Chris
Yeah.
Martin and the others from Akunetics. And yeah, we met at the Jazz Bar because a friend of mine, actually a colleague of mine, wanted to go there. Chris Martin, I think, messaged and we met there. Anyway, thank you very much, Ian. Thank you for joining. How are you, Ian?
All right, all right. I'm doing well. You?
Good, good. Yeah, for those, of course, who don't know you, can you please tell us a bit about yourself, your background?
Yeah, I mean, he's mostly covered, to be honest. But like, I mean, I've been working in this space for like 12 years, which is weird because it doesn't feel like it's been 12 years. Uh, but yeah, like as you said, like I started at Akinetics at a support desk, funnily enough, and like that company was quite interesting actually because we used to make a web application scanner. I mean, it still exists, still around. Um, and yeah, it basically like sort of opened up this huge sort of world of information security and I like also pen testing and stuff like this. Like so I've then gone on to doing like more sort of I don't know sort of the defensive side of things. So I've worked in the defensive side of things for a while, and then I also sort of changed tack a little bit and went into DevSecOps. Founded a startup a couple of years ago. We used to do phishing simulation, so it was called FishTech. So we used to basically simulate a realistic phishing attack. Exited from that, and now I'm doing I've squatted. So yeah, so
Nice.
that's sort of the trajectory, I guess.
Nice, interesting. It's interesting about Akunetics because it was the same for me. Before Akunetics, I was working for another company, a systems engineer. Um, I knew, of course, a bit about security, but not that much. But with Akunetics, yeah, you learn like this big word of web application security and how everything is tied together. Even
And
when I
also
started,
the vendor ecosystem as well, like sort of who the players are, whatever. It was a really good experience. That's true.
yes, it's very interesting. Good. So yeah, you have definitely the credentials to talk about today's subject. So yeah, let's start with the obvious question, like what is domain squatting?
So it's what it sounds like, which is like when you have. I mean, I guess it's coming from the like when you have squatters in a building, right? It's kind of like the same idea. So basically, someone who has the intention, usually it's malicious intent, right? Um, would register like a lookalike domain. So like there's several terms for the same thing: domain squatting, domain typo squatting, lookalike domains, doppelganger domains. They kind of all mean the same thing. Um, and yeah, like an adversary would register a domain that looks like the original. Would you tend to confuse someone, right? Now, the idea behind a typo squatted domain could be for someone to literally like mistype something on like when they're entering a domain and land on something malicious. But to be honest, the biggest risk, at least that I see, and like I think that makes sense, is that you would sort of see the stuff used in attacks like phishing attacks, for example, um, or sort of related attacks, right? Like when you have a domain that looks very similar to something else, or even if it doesn't look necessarily similar, like even if it isn't one character off, it might give the impression that it is the legit thing. Um, and that's sort of like where the whole thing comes from, right? Because like once someone either receives an email from something that looks like it could be legit, or lands on a website that is like sort of pretending to be the legit site, like that is sort of like one element of sort of trying to convince your target, right? That you're who you say you are, essentially. So, and then from then on, I mean, it can depend, right? Like you can sort of have a phishing email, again, a website that is harvesting credentials, or doing, or sending you something, or distributing malware. Like it sort of depends, and like where that goes.
Nice. It's interesting you're mentioning this because a few days ago, actually, I was watching a YouTube video about these guys. Let me share an image, I think, on the screen. If you can you see my image? So basically,
Okay.
if you go on Google and search for ChatGPT 04, there are these companies, chat.chatbot.app, chat.askAIchat.app. They are actually Google adverts, by the way. They're not
Yeah,
actually.
yeah, yeah. That's my
And
advertising actually.
and
It's
the
kind of,
logo is
yeah.
the logo is
It's
similar.
very similar. Yeah.
Its UI is similar. It's
Yes.
it's it's quite interesting. It is somehow related, no? As in like
And yeah, and actually, like, so you mentioned ChatGPT, but this is happening a lot with DeepSeek, for example. I mean, same premise, So, and yeah, as you're saying, like the logo would sort of resemble it in some shape or form, and yeah. So, I mean, it is similar, and yes, as you're pointing out, like, malvertising is like it's a legitimate problem because I mean it's usually like you usually just don't even need to do any SEO for this stuff, right? Like you don't need to do the hard work
you
of
just
like
pay.
ranking on Google. You just pay like Google like a few cents. It's actually quite cheap, and there's I mean quite cheap depending on what you want. But like if like you're like phishing credentials from someone who's basically it's just an ROI thing, right? Like if you're phishing credentials from someone who like you're going to steal some data from that's worth that data's worth like more money, basically. Like it becomes like a no-brainer, right? Like a link is a few cents on Google, so on Google AdWords. So yes, absolutely. It's quite, yeah, it's quite interesting that that space is
It's
also
very
very interesting.
interesting. In fact, this was the subject of this video. There was this guy who's a researcher, not security, just sort of like journalist researcher,
Mhm.
and he upgraded his ChatGPT subscription, and then he went to ChatGPT.io, whatever the URL is. He tried to log in, it's like user doesn't exist. Like I just
Yeah,
upgraded
yeah,
it, and
yeah.
he ended up finding out, and then he, of course, posted something online, and actually thousands of people are being tricked by these type of things,
Hmm.
which is very interesting. However, like this is ChatGPT, which is very popular. So before we jump into more details, why should small brand owners listen to what you have to say today? Like, does it also affect small business
So
or
yeah,
corporate?
absolutely. So the thing is this, right? Like with so okay, like large companies, large brands are definitely like a big juicy target, and it's easy sort of to take shots at these big brands because they're very well known. Um, but the thing is, they also have the budget to pay lawyers, the budgets to pay incident responders, and the budgets to pay the budget to pay for, maybe tools and processes that like just small business owners or like yeah, or they just won't have the same sort of resources, frankly. So obviously, it doesn't necessarily mean that as a like if you have a small business or if you have like a small operation, whatever you're doing, um, that you like need to go absolutely crazy with registering like all sorts of permutations of domains, like But I still think it makes sense to sort of have like kind of the basics down. and start from there at the very least. So it should still be something that is at least that you're at least aware of. I would say.
Interesting.
Yeah.
In fact, that was kind of like something I was thinking about as well. As a like us, Melapress, how far, how paranoid would you need to go in terms of
So
.com, .net, .org?
so there's two things I want to say about this, right? So the first one is I think you should just register the sort of the legacy traditional ones. So .com, if you can get it, probably you would have. I mean, it depends on the name, if that's available, whatever. But like, you should try and get a .com, .net, .org, and then you can look at maybe some um, some TLDs, so like the bit at the end, basically like the .com, .net, those are TLDs, top level domains. That like they would be country specific stuff where you would probably do some business in, like I don't know, maybe .co.uk or this sort of stuff. It kind of depends on the business you're in, and the reason I'm mentioning that is because like if you absolutely do not do business in the UK, like it might not make sense for you to even bother, but like you can pick a couple of these that you think make sense for you, and perhaps like a couple of typos quotable, like easy, so like yeah, like easily confusable domains that you might have on, say, the .coms, .nets, and like you can allocate the budget and like see what makes sense, frankly. I would probably, I mean, I'm not saying like it's bad to buy these domains. Of course, like the I guess the more you have, the better. But like if you have a limited pool of money to spend on domains, I probably wouldn't go and buy like the expensive ones. Like I wouldn't go and buy IO or like .security or something like that, because it's cost prohibitive. Also, just some domains, right? Like some country specific domains, there are actual processes that you need to, like there's paperwork. You don't just
Yes.
register the domain. So like I once registered the .dk, .mt is, I know it's the same. Like you actually need to like provide some reason as to why you're
You need
buying
the
the
domain,
domain, whatever.
actual
So
business.
like
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like the most thorough process everywhere, but there is sometimes some process involved that makes things a little bit. It's just like attackers would probably just go with something easier, frankly. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's no like straightforward answer, because like for every business it's a little bit different. But I would pick, like if I had to pick a few, I would go with sort of that mix. Now, and the other thing, and actually I've thought of the third bit, which is sort of also important, which is so you probably also want to know that something got squatted, because it's not just about okay, like if you don't have the domain, right? Like I mean, sometimes the domain is taken already, right? Like it's just parked, for example. And so parking is just a way for either people who are doing like domain investments or this kind of stuff, and they would like park a domain, and then someone will eventually buy it. And like buying those domains can be expensive, right? Like it depends on the domain again. Like especially if it's like a 3-letter or a 4-letter domain, it's
Yeah.
just going to be really expensive, right? So yeah, like in that case, you just want to know it's there, and you probably just want to monitor that, and like keep an eye on it. And like you don't necessarily need to go overboard with this, but it's good to know that something is out there. And like it ties probably to the other point, which is if you can, and if it is like like it's not cost prohibitive, trademarking your brand would probably be the best sort of defense. It is quite expensive, depending on on the size of your business. Obviously, like the larger you are, the easier that becomes. But also, there are, again, depending on the name of your business, like you can't really trademark certain things. So like, yeah, it kind of depends on, like, if it's a very generic term, there might be some restrictions that apply
Of
there.
course.
Obviously, trademarks vary between countries and like, sort of, uh, like, for example, you can register a trademark for the whole EU, for example, or whatever. But yeah, if you have to register trademarks in different countries, it will quickly be very expensive. So, like, there isn't like a one size fits all thing. It really depends on where your like your primary business and where your customers are. It depends on your, like, risk appetite, because, like, for example, if you are the kind of business that, I don't know, has a, like, food franchise, like a Subway or McDonald's or whatever, like, there is a big chance that, like, you're basically allowing other people to use your brand, right? Like, and then you kind of need to decide, do they get to register their domains, and they use them in their countries or in their geographies, whatever it is, or like, how does that work? So, like, it kind of it's really like, there's no one size fits all answer. But yeah, I think you should just be sensitive a little bit about
It
how
is
this
it's
works.
good that you yeah it's good that you mentioned the trademark, because I was going to ask. I know you're not a lawyer, but I was going to
Mm.
ask about it, and
Very, very far from it. So
it makes a difference, because we did use the trademark from that. We do have a trademark, and we did use it from that. It makes
yeah,
life a bit easier. But yeah, registering domains in different countries, a trademark depends where, yeah, it can be a bit of an admin overhead, both in terms of time and also cost. Especially, I remember, just for fun, I wanted to um, register malpress.mt, because they're just some Maltese, which we don't use. And after I saw, like, they started asking, like, for the official papers, and like, thank you very much. And
yeah, yeah.
I'm
It
out
might
of
it might just it might just not be worth it. Yeah.
exactly.
Um,
So yeah. So before you mentioned, like, there are different names for different types of domain. I mean, still domain squatting, but different types. Like, yeah,
mm,
what are the tactics used? Because, and I'm asking this because basically here it is not just about the business owner, because as such, it's not if someone squats a domain, they're not
mhm.
as such damaging the business, but they are targeting the customers of those business. So you need to know, as a
Yes.
business owner, what techniques there are to educate someone.
So, I mean, this it kind of, like, in terms of nomenclature, this varies, right? I mean, but there's a couple of like, things that, for example, we look for, that like, I'm familiar with. I mean, there's tons of others, of course, I'm sure, or like names for the same things. But, like, for example, you would have situations like, for example, when you're adding a character in a domain. So I like to use example.com, just because it's like,
Mhm.
it's meant for this stuff. So, like, you could have, like, example Z like, ends with a Z, for example,
Mhm.
examples.com, and so that's like an addition, for instance. You could have bit squatting. So you would have, like, it exploits, like, this binary similarity between characters. So, for example, you would have examp1e.com, like, the L would be similar to
One, yeah.
to the one. You could have like this double vowel insertion, we call it, where you've got example will have like two A's. Or homoglyph, which is quite interesting, actually, where this is like it, this is a really this homoglyph
I've never
domain
heard it, in fact.
mascotting
I need to ask.
is a really big topic, actually. And but homoglyphs are basically when you substitute characters that are visually similar. So, like, one big one is Cyrillic, right? So, like, you can have different scripts, where, I mean, there are some rules. You can't mix everything nowadays. Before it was different, but, like, you can't like, nowadays there are some rules about what you can and can't mix together. But, like, in Cyrillic, for example, so, like, basically languages like Russian, Ukrainian, and so forth, they would have like, they have characters that resemble like an E, or I think even an A, that is very close to the real, like, the real, the I should say, the like, the Latin
The
E
Latin
or the
alphabet,
Latin A. I
exactly.
mean, it's called something different. I don't speak Russian, but, like, and so if you basically put it like next to each other. I mean, you will notice it if you put it literally like put them next to each other. But man, like there's no way you're going to put that in a URL. It's impossible. So I mean, if around this there are some things. There are some like some standards. They're called like the IDN, International Domain Name standards, that prohibit certain scripts in use with others. So I believe for Cyrillic, there's only like a set. I think you can only use them on certain TLDs and in conjunction with certain characters. Otherwise, they just won't let you register the domain, or at least they're not meant to. Right, and it goes like we can expand on this as much as you want, but like even the mechanism of how like non-ASCII, I should say, like non-ASCII characters are represented in DNS is its whole like
So at least
interesting
we have,
topic.
yeah,
But
people have
yeah,
an idea of
yeah,
what it
yeah.
is.
But
And
there's other stuff, there's like hyphenation when you add hyphens, when you insert characters, keywords, or it is just like there's a omission when you remove stuff. So there's like a ton of them, subdomains. So I mean, I don't need to go to the
interesting.
whole.
I've read in the past, in fact, about this um, Cyrillic
There
characters.
was a big thing where someone registered a lookalike thing
I'm
for
not sure if it's
Apple.com in the
Gmail or
past.
something, but a big domain, yeah, a big
Apple, yeah, yeah,
domain.
yeah, and they got a certificate for it. It was like the big thing, and I think based on that, Chrome, there's I think Chrome at some point like changed their policy, because basically there are some of these you can register, but it depends on like the browser will has this algorithm, and it's quite like complicated, to be honest, as in like it accounts for a lot of edge cases where based on the presence of what glyphs there are, it will either show you the like the original script basically, or it will show you the puny it's called. So you will see something like xn dash dash and like because basically DNS is ASCII based. So sort of Latin A to Z, 0 to 9 with some like other glyphs, but there isn't support for, say, I don't know, Arabic glyphs or I don't know, Thai glyphs, for example. So they had to hack this thing on top of ASCII called Punicode to get those to work. But it's really interesting. And to be honest, this is something quite that interests me as an area of research that we want to get into at some point, which is, we're quite familiar with typo spotting for like sort of English language, kind of uh, focus. But I'm sure there's like interesting stuff to be found or to be discovered about typo spotting in scripts that we don't like most English speaking people don't look at.
It makes a difference because since I've moved, as we were talking before, I live in the Netherlands. Since I moved in a country which is not primarily English speaking, I've always thought that everyone uses English domains.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
okay, this is actually a Dutch word.
But it's also like it's also so like most European languages, they would use Latin script, right? But
Correct.
this is also about like, I don't know, what does it look like if you're typo spotting in Arabic or something. It's a
Yeah.
different world, right? Which I have no idea about. So it's quite an interesting topic, I think.
Before we go, because I have some other questions, but before
Yeah,
we
yeah,
go,
yeah, of course.
because you said like you are doing research, so you can give people some context. Can you explain like what are you doing with? So first of all, your website is domain score. What can you
This
can
is
you
called
explain?
Have I Been Spotted?
Yes,
Yeah,
and
it's
what do you
it's
do
yeah.
exactly? Yeah.
So it's a play on words. I mean, it started out as a play on words on Have I Been Pwned, Troy Hunt's
Yeah,
project.
for Hunt, yeah.
I don't know. Like maybe I kind of like the name, but it's
That's good. It's
it,
nice.
start- it started it started out as a joke, and then it kind of stuck. So, um, but yeah, basically what we do is so again, so Have I Been Squatted started out as a research project, like a side project. And the idea was and is that we will take a domain, and we will, so like example.com, and we will apply a bunch of different mangling rules, or like rules, to permutate that domain in different ways. So, for example, what we were talking about, like adding letters, removing them, bit flipping, the sort of stuff, right? And that is going to give you, like, just thousands and thousands of possible permutations. And then what we do is then we go and we actually like make a DNS request for them, because the whole point of this is to find typo squatted domains, right? To find domains that are lookalike domains. And so the idea is you start off with your own domain, you apply a bunch of permutations to these domains, to this domain, sorry, and then you check like if it exists. So like we basically go and make a DNS request for these. And if something comes back, then we do other stuff. So like this, it's like a pipeline, right? So if DNS comes back with nothing, we just treat it it doesn't exist, it doesn't interest us, right? If it comes back with something, then we will look at other DNS records. We look at maybe there's a website there. We try and grab the HTTP banner. We try and grab the SMTP banner. Take a screenshot if there's a web page available. So there's a whole pipeline of things. We look at certificates, and yeah, like there's like well, now we do that. We didn't before in the initial version, but yeah. So yeah,
So
that's
you detect,
basically
yeah, domains. In fact, yeah, I went to the website, I typed Melapress, and it's very interesting because you will see different types of combination, and it will tell you how close it is or not, if it is registered, as you're saying, which
yeah,
is very interesting, very interesting.
yeah, exactly.
But we're talking about the domains. So for people who don't kind of like who cannot picture what can happen. So okay, my domain has been not my domain because all right, but there's domain squatting related to our brand. Now, what are the dangers there as a business owner? What dangers are there, boys?
Okay, so I mean, it can be varied, right? Like we spoke a little bit about, I think the main two, right, in the beginning. But like the thing that is, let's just talk about the most common stuff, right? So the most common is either an attacker would use this domain. So let's say they register example.com, right? Um, what are the things they can do, right? So like they can either put up a web page that either is a complete clone of yours, right, or is like very close looking, or use your brand or whatever, and use that to either confuse your existing customers, or to try to yeah, like to try to masquerade as you, basically. And again, like the ways they can attract users, either as you mentioned, like just paid ads, frankly. Like, I mean, it's quite easy to just, like, let's say there's a, I don't know, an e-commerce site, right? It's quite easy to just just go to say Google and Bing, whatever, and just pay the money, show ads for, I don't know, this e-commerce site, which, by the way, is not like this happens for legit reasons, right? Like, I mean, you can target your competitors for
Of
for
course, yeah,
keywords,
because they're
right?
selling
So like,
keywords.
it's not like this is seen necessarily as like a super shady practice, right? Like, you can target your competitors for keywords. So this thing, can be like, doesn't necessarily isn't necessarily caught by, say, AdWords or whatever immediately. I mean, I guess at some point maybe it might get caught, right, if it gets reported, but um, oftentimes these domains, they're short-lived. They don't necessarily need to live very long to um, sort of accomplish what they're after, right? And the other route is via email, right? Like, so like we all know that sort of like there's a bunch of emails, email addresses that are like lost in data breaches, whatever. So it's really not that big of a stretch to have like an email list, and just blast out
Actually,
a bunch
there
of
are
emails.
businesses selling. I mean, us
Yeah, 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 yeah.
as a legitimate business receives email. I would you like list of competitor X or Y? It's very normal actually.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, So there's tons of ways, tons of different creative ways that you can get in front of targets, victims, whatever, you know. And again, like I mean, it's just if something is going to look a little bit different, sorry, it's going to look like just very what's the word I'm looking for? The difference isn't that big, right? So if you're just switching two letters, or you're putting a one instead of or a zero instead of an O or whatever, it might be quite convincing actually, right? And yeah, and like for example, one I don't know if you had other questions around this, but like maybe we can talk about this.
Yeah, go ahead,
So
doctor.
like one really interesting attack that I'm still like it still has captured, it's really captured my imagination, because I think this, like it was this month, like I think it was last week or the week before. There was this big supply chain attack. Actually, in my opinion, it went a little bit underreported, because like it was a really interesting attack. I don't want to say cool, because but it was a really
But it is
interesting
cool.
attack. But it is
Technologically, it is
technically,
cool.
like honestly, technically it is cool. And the way, so what these attackers did, they were targeting NPM. So NPM is like the node package manager. So
Mhm.
if anyone has like used JavaScript, TypeScript
Used
stuff
for by
before, they've
developers,
yeah,
builders.
exactly. So they would have touched this, I'm sure. Um, and anyway, like there was this particular package called what was it? ESLint config prettier, something like that. Yeah, ESLint config prettier. Anyway, it's a widely used package. It's probably installed. I think last I checked, there was like I don't know 30K plus downloads every week. So it's a pretty big
It's
package,
a
right?
big thing. Yeah.
And anyway, basically, what these guys did was they sent an email to the package maintainer, because the email address of the package maintainers is public, right? At least it's an NPM policy. And they pretended to be NPM, but in their they basically said something like, I don't remember what the lure was, but in the email, but it was something like you need to log into your account or something of the sort. But the link, like the link that took the victim to and to this npm lookalike
Fake
page, whatever.
NPM.
I mean, actually, there aren't any real details, at least publicly, that I've seen of what happened after the email. But my suspicion is that they like sort of clicked a link and it took them somewhere, and I can explain what I think might have happened. But it was something like npnjs.com. It's just a one-off, and it was really interesting. Like a bunch of people, like I actually read an article where they went through, like they actually, these guys actually went and found like a weakness in the way npm handles like auth tokens and everything, and they're like, we missed the typo squat ourselves, when we were looking to do this research. But what is also really, really interesting about this attack was that, and the reason the package maintainer got confused, was that the email came from npmjs.org, which is a real legit
Domain.
domain that
Interesting.
npm use. And it's confusing. In fact, like on the, because I think it's a he tweeted about this. They basically said something like, I don't get this, like my like how can an attacker just send email from npmjs.org? And the reason is that npm, which is owned by GitHub, which is owned by Microsoft, they actually missed placing SPF, DMARC, and DKIM
Records.
records on the
Wow.
domain. So basically, and like this is a domain that is used, it's legit, but no email is ever sent from it. So they basically, I mean, essentially, it's a weakness or a vulnerability, right? On npm's part, there's this confusion that happened with the typo squatting, and what I presume would have happened, right, in this situation, is that the author, because I think they said they had 2FA enabled. So like what typically happens in this scenario is that you would as a victim, you would go onto a link, you'd follow a link and it would take you to a page. And what actually could be that happen is that you would essentially be directed to a phishing proxy, or like an attacker in the middle proxy. And so like these attacker in the middle proxies, they bypass 2FA because they essentially they sit in the middle, and it's like that's why it's called attacker in the middle, and they just relay stuff, and they just change bits of the page. But like basically what ends up happening is that the attacker asks you for your password, for your username, your password. If your password is incorrect, it's going to tell you, look, that's incorrect, because like it's actually going to the real site and doing the real thing, right? And it's going to ask you for your 2FA code. You're going to enter that 2FA code, and it's going to come back and it's going to say, like correct or not. And when you actually authenticate, what probably ends up happening is that the attacker proxy in the middle would grab that cookie and just do something with it. And probably they weren't using a YubiKey, which would, or like a hardware token or Touch ID, whatever, like either a FIDO token or a WebBot token that would have probably prevented this. But it's just I just love the story because it's just interesting end to end. There's like these three sort of things that needed to align, I guess. But yeah, like it's a cool story.
Very interesting. It's good because before you mentioned like you were going to say it's cool, but it's a hack, so it's not cool. But the reality is, I've seen a few of these type of attacks. When you see these kind of like chain of attacks of exploiting of issues together, okay, it's used for the wrong reasons, but when you think about the imagination of the attacker, it is something to admire, quite frankly. When to come
Yeah.
with the type of
No,
material.
absolutely. And actually, this is something I wanted to say, because like if there is anything that we can learn from this event, is that if you have registered domains, so like let's say you have example.net, right? Your main domain is example.com, and you don't send, like the only reason you have example.net is for preventing someone else from typo spotting you. You absolutely still need to set up sorry, not deacon, because you don't really need deacon, but in that case. But what you do need is SPF and DMARC set to basically reject all
Or
emails, right? I mean, it's fairly easy to do. It really doesn't require any special effort, but yeah, and we can talk
Good.
about SPF and DMARC and DKIM if
Yeah,
needed.
for those who don't know, SPF and DMARC and also DKIM are they called DNS protocols though, or like
So they're more like
frameworks,
they're more
actually,
like
right?
frameworks, exactly, because
Yeah,
I mean SPF is sender policy framework, for
yeah.
example, and
So to
they
help
are
protect against anti-spam and verify that the emails coming
yeah,
from
they're more like
right.
exactly. So they are DNS records that you set on your DNS zone, and they're basically trying to tell other mail servers how email should how email from your domain should be handled. Now, of
Exactly.
course, the end result, the end server, right, like the receiver of that email might have, like a proof point or Mimecast or whatever, or like, yeah, like it's up to them how to handle that email in reality. But basically, I mean, I don't know if we have time for this, but like we can go into the differences of DKIM, SPF,
Yeah.
and DMARC if you
It's
want.
up to you, but yeah, but basically, yeah, they give an SPF. This is actually telling you as well from where emails
Yeah, from which IP addresses. I mean,
are coming and stuff like that.
really simply,
Yeah,
SPF is telling you from which IP addresses. DKIM is signing parts of the message in the email to sort of allow a target email server to verify that the contents of the email are correct. And DMARC is sort of like this overall sort of structure that will sort of allow you to define what percentage of SPF or DKIM you should be allowing. And the nice thing about DMARC actually is that it also allows other mail servers to send you reports back to your to an email address of your choosing about like how like to sort of give you some intelligence, some idea about how your domain is being used. But yeah, in summary, you should definitely like it's quite simple and especially like if you're using Office 365, Google Workspace, like this is all handled for you.
Automatically
So
almost. Yeah. Yeah.
most of the times you just need to set a DNS record with the right things, and it's usually handled quite easily.
Good to know, because I never thought about this. We do have other domains like the .NET and all. It's
Yeah,
good
yeah.
to know, because usually, yeah, you
I mean,
just,
if you don't send emails from them, of course, right?
it's good,
Like, I
of course, yeah.
mean, yeah, for sure.
Um, DNSSEC does it still doesn't help, no? As in, like, it's
Not
because
really,
it's
no,
not.
no. And
Mhm.
actually, this stuff. So the one point I want to mention is that even though DNS, even though DMARC, DKIM, SPF are there, they're there to help. Um, so they will not help against typo spotting because, like
No,
you. So what their function is to be able to prevent other people, or prevent malicious users rather, from sending email as you. So they're basically preventing spoofing. But in the case, and DNSSEC is the same thing, but for DNS records,
for
right?
DNS records, correct? Yeah.
Um, so I mean, quite different, but like the idea is largely the same.
Mhm.
So what we're talking about here is like if I register a domain that looks exactly the same, or like looks very close to the original thing, I should say. Um, I can set up my own SPF. I can set up my own DKIM. I can set up
Exactly.
my own DMARC, make it look, absolutely legit, right? And like there's to be clear, that is usually a tell, to be honest, because like, let's face it, if you're just setting up something to scam someone, you might, as an attacker, you may not go through that trouble. It depends on what you're doing, because like if you want to send email nowadays, you kind of have to have these records, otherwise you're just going to run into pain. um, but yeah, it's kind of a tell when there are domains that don't have those records. Yeah.
Interesting. So basically, with domain squatting, it makes at least one of the most common attacks, phishing, very, very easy. As in, like, it's very easy to trick.
It's yeah, I would say so, because like yeah, it does make it easy. It makes it like it basically sort of exploits like
The
the human
human factor,
vulnerability,
maybe,
if you
yeah,
want. Yeah,
whatever.
exactly. So like, you look at the domain, and if it's close enough, you just won't look at it. I mean, like
Mm.
realistically. Um, so yeah, it's
And it happens
like
to everyone.
when it's quite. I mean, and what you will also find, right? Like, because to be fair, like especially if your domain is well, like you've taken the sort of the .nets and whatever of this world, right? And let's say like you've also covered a few typo squats. I mean, what you sometimes will get is either like some really sort of, I don't know, like for example, bank-enroll.com, bank name-enroll.com, or like whatever, something like that. That's called like combo squatting usually, because it's basically like you're grabbing a name and then you're tacking on something else. That is, it basically needs like a different. I mean, they are sort of detectable. It's another thing actually that you can do. Like you can probably, so there's this tool called cert.sh, sorry, crt.sh, isn't cert, but crt.sh. I think it's by Komodo, like the certificate authority.
Authority, yeah.
Yeah, and they basically, I mean, sometimes it's down, to be honest. Like I visited it like twice last week, and it was down sometimes because it gets quite a bit of traffic. But basically, what they do is they look at the certificate transparency log. So like whenever you register a new certificate, whenever you request a new certificate nowadays, before it wasn't the case. The CA will actually, like, that's the certificate authority, will basically have to register the certificate in the CT log. And what that gives you is the ability, like if you are looking at the CT log, you can, I think they allow you to search with wildcards, crt.sh. So you can basically search for your brand with a star or something like that.
Mhm.
And it would probably pop up like you should see your own certificates, of course, but you might see some other stuff that might be interesting. Actually, this is something we don't do right now. It's something we're looking into. It's quite an interesting technical challenge to get it to work. But yeah, it's definitely an area of a lot of interest, because there's a lot of potential, like interesting uh, typo squats, but combo squats, I guess, domains there that are easy to miss otherwise. So
Interesting. In fact, I was going to mention that. So, yeah, the DNS frameworks and stuff, they don't have, because of course, if you set up examples.net with a Z,
exactly. I mean, they protect for spoofing, but not
yeah,
for
but
yeah,
if they it still exploit the human vulnerability of
exactly,
not seeing things. TLS certificates, especially nowadays with Let's Encrypt, they don't help either, because even if you have
hmm
a domain squatting, you squatting a domain, you can still register.
exactly. And
In the
also, like
past,
the TLS is just safeguarding
to
the
encrypt,
transport, right?
but in the
Exactly,
past,
end
I
to end.
remember you could get a certificate where I remember I used to work at GFI. To get a certificate, actually, you had to prove that you are a business, you had to
Yeah,
submit
yeah,
things,
yeah.
because there are levels of certification, like
So
for
there's two, yeah,
validation.
there are two types of certificates. There's DV, domain validated, and there's OV,
Ex-
organization validation, I think. There might be another one. I don't remember,
I
but like
forgot, but yeah,
those
there
are the
used
two
to be.
the two big ones, right? Like the
Mhm.
two most common ones. And like for like in the past, actually, this has stopped recent. Like basically, OV certificates are not really in fashion anymore,
No,
and the
no,
reason is because Chrome removed the. I mean, they basically before you would see like the next to the address bar there would be like this green bubble with the name of the company or whatever, you know.
exactly. Yeah.
And that's like so it still exists. You can still get a certificate that's organization validated, but it no longer like shows up in the URL. So like
Mhm.
most people are like, well, what's the point, you know?
Do you think?
Um,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, but yeah, but what I was saying, like most certificates are domain validated today, and
Do you think moving forward, because of problems like domain squatting and phishing, it makes sense to have some sort of like OV certificates again and some sort of like integration in browsers? Like, hey, this is claims to
the
be example.com, but it is examples.net. So
So actually, Chrome does alert you sometimes. So like if it is a popular, I mean there are some rules, but if it's I think a popular site and it's like I mean there are some rules about when it alerts you. Like it's very close, you might get notified
mm,
about it in the browser. I'm not sure about like other browsers, to be honest. I know Chrome, like I've encountered it once or twice, but yeah. Other than that, I mean, it's difficult because like what might be this is another problem, right? Like what might be typo squatting to like to you might be like a legitimate claim to someone else, really. Like it's the thing is this is like a lot of this is a gray area because
mm,
like obviously you are interested in protecting your name, your brand, um, but I mean even when it comes to taking down a domain, right? Like if we look at like most of the time, like if you don't get anywhere with sort of the technical response taking down a domain, most of the time you will end up in sort of like the legal side of things. So like it doesn't how then do we even resolve this inside of a browser? You know what I mean? So it's not it's quite I think it's quite hard to do, to be honest. So there might be some situations again where like it's just one thing off. I have heard of so like like I've heard of people who had this really cool idea, who wanted to use our API for this. Like they came up with I think was quite a cool idea, but like they wanted to like grab say their domains and like a couple of their partners or suppliers or whatever, they would pass them through Traffic and Squad and they'd get like this like long list of domain permutations, right? And like then what they would do, or they I don't know if they implemented, but they had this idea to do, is that they would then because they also had like their passive DNS logs from their EDR and whatever in their scene, and they would like try and correlate if, like if someone requested a domain that, matched something that we found, they would look at it. But like, again, this sort of stuff is only really doable when you are a larger enterprise. You have like sort of, maybe a SOC or a security team or something like
The
along those
infrastructure.
lines. The infrastructure to do it, and the tools, and the time, and the resource, and the people.
Exactly.
So, I mean, it's yeah, it's just that's
It's
just one thing that I thought about.
it's
Like
interesting. So if you find that find out as a business owner that someone has squatted a domain similar to yours, like
mhm.
what options do you have? Or
So
what's the
a
process
lot of
usually?
it. So it depends. So it depends on what that domain is host. So first of all, like if it's hosting nothing, I don't know. Like it's just going to be a case of you want something that someone else has, probably, right? And so I mean you can try and because like this happens with park domains a lot, right? Like I mean, that guy has a domain I want, and so like obviously the solution there most of the time, especially if it's parked, they probably want to sell it. So you can buy the domain, right? So that's like one easy example. And obviously, like you need they need to agree on a price, whatever. It's like there's this whole industry of domain brokerage and
Yes, it is
whatever.
a big
Like
thing, a very big thing.
like Sedo, GoDaddy, whatever. Yeah. Then there's also like let's say someone is very clearly squatting your domain and distributing either malware or like like malware, like literally downloading malware on a user's machine, or maybe they're doing some kind of fraud, like some credit card scraping or this kind of stuff, right? In that situation, in that scenario, um, you probably won't be like, I mean, so there's taking out the domain, like literally, the domain is no longer resolvable by DNS. And there is this also this process where you can, like say you actually want ownership of that domain. But there's also the side of things where you can report it to, say, Google Safe Browsing, which is like basically this technology that's, I mean, it's managed by Google, but like also other browsers make use of this thing. Um, so yeah, you can report it to Google Safe Browsing, and like Microsoft have Smart Screen and this kind of stuff as well. And essentially what happens there is if they deem it to be malicious, basically, then that stuff gets sort of, I mean, it doesn't get taken down per se, but like you see this bigger red warning, so it's kind of like
Yeah, if someone
sort of
tries
the
to access
same.
it,
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean that usually works on URLs, which is it's a good thing that it operates on URLs and not domains, in my opinion,
Mhm.
because like you can have situations where like let's say a WordPress site, for example, like let's say they're running like some vulnerable plugin of some sort, and that gets popped, and like I don't know, like there's some malicious thing, but it only affects like I don't know some pages, not the main site. That gives them, like the browser manufacturers gives them the ability to sort of surgically say, okay, it's these links that are the issue and not everything else, right? Like these URLs that are the issue. But yeah, in general, so let's say that's not the case, and you want to like let's try and take down a domain. So like the first thing, like let's say they're infringing your brand, and it's like really obvious and evident. So I mean, it will really hinge on if you have a trademark or not, to be honest, and if that domain got registered before or after you made the trademark. Because, like, for example, there's this very popular example with Nissan. So, like, if you go to Nissan.com, it's not like it's not like the car company, right? It's about like this guy basically who I think in the 90s or something.
I didn't
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, yeah. He had registered this domain, and like I think it was his name or like some sort of his
Surname,
business or
Uzi,
something.
Uzi
Yeah,
Nissan.
exactly. That's the name. Yeah. And I think he passed away or something recently because like it's sort of like a memorial page. It's quite surreal to be
I'm sure he
honest.
gets some traffic, some good traffic.
Yeah, exactly. And I think at some point they even wanted to like even in the sun even want like the car company I mean wanted to like buy the domain for something like $10 million, and he said no. So whatever, like it was this really long drawn out legal battle, and he got to keep the domain. So like because basically he I mean, I don't know the details of the story, but like there was some claim, like for him to own that domain. So it's not straightforward, even when I mean I'm sure that like Nissan have good lawyers kind of thing, so yeah, it's not always straightforward, and it will hinge upon like you having a trademark most of the time. But in any case, what you definitely should do is, so first things first is like always document the the state of the world at the time, right? So like it's to like the first step is always to just take full page screenshots of things, capture like who is or RDAP data, any DNS records, TLS certificates, or like SSLs, it's the same thing. Any HTTP responses, or I don't know, like bits of JavaScript that are important if you're taking down, especially like a malicious site. Um, and then you need to go knocking. So like then you can try the hosting provider, and this is what we do when we take down the site, right? Like we
I was about to
we
say, no, you provide. Have I been
yeah, so so
correctly?
so we
Provide
we do
this.
we do yeah we do takedowns based on like technical steps, right? So like
Mhm.
what we do is this process, right? Like it's sort of like automated for
Clearly,
our
it's not an
customers,
easy. It's not an easy process for some of the smaller
No,
companies.
no, no. Like you need to submit it to block list and whatever. So like there's this whole,
Yes.
like list of steps. And I mean, at the end of the day, it all hinges on like first of all, like the person requesting the takedown needs to have like a strong basis as to why they want the thing taken down, right? Because there have been, I mean, there was this really popular, sorry, this like big news story, I think last year or something, where itch.io, which is like an indie game website, yeah, like some developer on that website was, you know, breaching some trademark of, I can't remember what the company who had this trademark infringement was, but yeah, like they ended up taking down the whole itch.io site. So like it's basically the same idea as like if, imagine you have like a knockoff pair of Nikes or whatever being sold on eBay or Amazon, and like the registrar just nukes eBay off of or Amazon.com off of the internet. It's that
Mm,
level of
mm,
crazy, right? So like
mm.
there is you know there is some level of you need to be careful with this stuff, and like it's also like you need to go to the registrar. The registrar needs to, so the registrar is the company that is registering the domain, right? So they can act, the hosting provider can act as well, but again, like in most cases, you need to try those avenues for like from a technical standpoint. If that doesn't work, then you're in the legal run, right? And like so
Mm.
that's a point where we hand it off to like a partner of ours who knows what they're doing, right? It's not me doing that kind of stuff, that's for sure. And then you get into like you can send them a cease and well, the registrar or the hosting provider, you send them cease and desist usually, and then if that doesn't work, then you can go into this thing called what's it called? I always forget the acronym.
Uh,
Uniform Domain Name Resolution Dispute
UDRP, right?
UDRP. Yeah, UDRP is the thing.
Yeah,
I think
I don't
it's
know the acronym.
Uniform Domain Name Dispute Resolution, something
Resolution.
like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And it's basically like this process with ICANN, which is like the sort of this international body that like
It's
sort of
almost like
is
the
in
head
charge
of
of.
the internet, no, as in like domains
Kind
and
of, yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Domains, IP addresses, yeah, exactly.
yeah,
And they usually facilitate this process, but it's expensive. I mean, I don't remember of the top of my head what that process is like, but it's as in the fee exactly, but it's somewhere like $4,000 or $5,000, I think, something like that. It's long. It takes something like two, 2 months, I think, or like 60 days or something like that. And yeah, like the end result is if you win the case, the domain gets transferred to you. But again, like you need a trademark in that case most of
exactly.
the time. At least that I know of. I maybe there are some other avenues, but yeah, it's not like the most straightforward process basically.
Good. Okay, so as a business owner, register the trademark, try to register some extra domains if you can, the ones that at least apply to you. Of course, I know set up, I know usually but still set up they don't necessarily help, but yeah, set up the DMIR, CDKIM, SPF, and even like domains which you don't use for emails.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot that you can do. Use tools like Have I Been Squatted to check and stuff like that. But that is the business owner. So how can the business owner help the victim, as in like the customers, make them aware? I think the most common, which we see quite a lot, I receive quite a lot of emails from bank account like
Mm-hmm.
we don't usually call, how can the business owners educate their customers and prospects about these problems?
Um, so it's difficult. Like I mean, because at the end of the day, they are sort of um, yeah, like they're basically doing sort of this public service, I guess, right? Where you need to educate people. I mean, definitely there are sort of it depends. So it depends what area of um, like what your business is, right? But like there are certain things that you can do. Like so, for example, with banks or financial institutions, one thing that I saw that I liked a lot actually, relatively recently. I can't remember the name of the bank. I think it was I think I'm going to go out on a limb, and I think it was Monzo. The UK fintech company. I think they had this feature which was quite cool, where if the bank is calling you or like you're in a call with the bank in the app, it will actually let you know. So like you can literally go into the app and like it will tell you, listen, you are actually on a call with the bank. So like you can check. But like so there are definitely sort of policies and like ways that you can structure how you divulge information to customers and how you don't. You know, this is why obviously banks, for example, will never like they will always tell you we will never ask you for your PIN or whatever because yeah, the moment you do and it's coming from a legit bank, like you've just broken that trust and that like education, like or so I mean it's not an easy question because it will really depend on the kind of business. Like if you obviously have rapport with your customers directly, like and it makes sense to like you can obviously like sort of educate them that way. There could be what's it called, like maybe a security page on your website that details this kind of stuff. That could be helpful for some situations. And I would say if you're in a position to do so, it and like and make sense for your business, like it might make sense to allow your users to authenticate with providers that like have a vested interest in making sure that yeah they don't get passed through some of these like phishing proxies or whatever. I mean, it's not like it can't happen, but or it doesn't happen actually, but it would it's they have a much bigger vested interest in making sure that they have these defenses set up. So like if you're authenticating to a site and you're authenticating user username and password, right? Like I mean that is an option, but of course, but it's probably more convenient and easier for your customers to authenticate using SSO like Google, Facebook, whatever, and also like the more like, and the reason I'm mentioning is because like more and more we're seeing slowly, very slowly, the adoption of YubiKeys and passkeys, and this kind of stuff. Those technologies are what will probably like really make it much harder for credential stuffing and these sorts of attacks to take place. So it's yeah, like how you educate your customers. It's a big it's a big area, and it's quite difficult, I think.
So mostly, yeah, you can add different types of protocols and policies, of course, but awareness is also like
I mean, just to give you an example of what those policies are, like let's say you deal a lot with like a particular company, right? Like, and this is not really related to domain squatting, but I mean, kind of maybe tangentially, but like you receive, these invoices from someone, like picking up the phone every so often and being like, listen, is this like the correct amount or whatever, having a relationship outside of, sending emails. There was this really big thing that had happened a while ago. I don't remember the details, but I think Google and or like Meta were impacted, where they just were sending money to some, like some person posing to be a supplier of theirs, and they only noticed later, and there was a really like big chunk of cash that went missing because of it. So like it can happen to gigantic companies,
everyone.
like
Yeah.
it can happen to everyone, to be honest. So
I mean, just a few weeks ago, Troy Hunt was fished as well. So,
exactly.
who?
So
I mean, if it happens to him, quite frankly, it can
exactly,
happen to everyone
exactly,
who
exactly,
works in the industry.
absolutely.
Thanks a lot. There's much more we can dive into, but yeah, time is pressing. Thanks a lot,
Yeah.
Ian. Um, Before we conclude, is there anything important or particular I want to mention? Something else, or
No, I'll just say if this topic interests you, or yeah, like if you want to like you're interested in domain type of squatting, whatever, like just uh, and you want to give Have I Been Squatted a go, like there's it's free to use, so like you can use it for free. You need to sign up to get the full results, but like other than that, there's a free tier that you can use, and of course like then there's paid tiers that will give you like more stuff and monitoring and whatever. But yeah, if you want to just get started and have like the basics covered, and maybe like check in once a month or something, or even less. It depends on how like on your business. But like if you want to just see what it's like, and see what the attack surface is, you can try it out for free. Yeah, you don't even need to sign up if you just want like literally an example. But like to get the full results, you can sign up and you can get the full results over there.
good. Yeah, haveibeenspotted.com. And yeah, if you want to reach out to Ian, also on LinkedIn, I'm presuming,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you should
yeah.
chat us. Good. Thanks a lot, Ian. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining in, and we'll see you next week, same time on Thursdays at 4 p.m. Central European time and 10 a.m. Eastern time. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. Bye.